Welcome to Politics Unplugged. I'm Ann Trujillo, and in just over 10 weeks, we will know which one of these two men, Republican Walker Stapleton or Democrat Jared Polis, will be Colorado's next governor. And joining us to talk about where things stand 10 weeks out are John Frank, the political reporter for the Colorado Sun, and Blair Miller of the DenverChannel.com. Thank you, gentlemen, both for being here. We're talking a lot of money in this race right now. Jared Polis, of course, putting a whole lot of his own money in. Is this a toss-up, this race?
It's August, but it's a really crucial period right now, and that's why you're seeing so much spending, because both sides are really trying to frame the debate before we get into the traditional campaign. That's after Labor Day. That's when some of the polls will come out, and those polls will define the race for the weeks to come, if not the entire election. So that's why you're seeing a lot of money spent right now. I think you'll see even more money spent further down the road, but this is a really crucial period for Stapleton and Polis to set the parameters of the campaign and try to make it a close race.
And you've seen the RGA spending a lot of money for Stapleton against Polis, but then Polis came out and committed already $3 million to October for TV ad buys. So I think we're kind of just getting started. But like John said, you got to set the tone early on.
All right, so we cannot help but see what's happening in Washington right now. So let's talk about the Donald Trump impact on this race, and I suppose any race in Colorado for a Republican candidate. What's the impact, do you think?
I spoke to Walker Stapleton last week, and what he told me was that the Trump issue is a Washington issue. These indictments, these convictions, he's trying to separate himself from it. But that said, it's going to be difficult because he aligned himself pretty closely with Trump in the Republican primary.
Right.
He said he wants to campaign with him. One thing we haven't seen in this race that I'm waiting to see is whether Trump will campaign for him out here in Colorado, but also endorse him. The White House officials held a call this week and laid out their plan for September and told us that he's not coming to Colorado, at least on the preliminary plan right now, but there's still October, so we'll see.
But I think that's another question that Republicans have, at least strategists, of what kind of, voters the Republican base is going to turn out in November. Do you want to be aligned with Trump or do you not want to be aligned with Trump in Colorado specifically? Because, across the nation, we've seen people want Trump to come in and campaign for them. But is that a good move in Colorado?
And how do you draw that line as a candidate? How far do you want to separate yourself from the president?
Well, Trump's a huge factor when it comes to Republicans. And if this race, like most midterms, is about intensity, is about enthusiasm for the candidates, then Walker Stapleton's going to need those Trump voters to show up. He's going to need them to not only vote, but also canvass for him and try to get their neighbors out to vote. And that intensity factor is really important. What Trump's good at is keeping his base really revved up. And Walker Stapleton's going to need some of that. But at the same time, the Republicans in Colorado always have to separate themselves a little bit to win those swing voters who are crucial and decide elections here in Colorado.
Right, and we've seen the RGA push makes it look like, that they know they need a little bit extra effort here in a state Trump lost by 5 points in 2016. And, in the primary showing, at least, unaffiliated voters were going heavily Democratic. So I think Republican strategists know that they're going to need a big push here.
Well, and those primary numbers, neither one of these candidates, Stapleton or Polis, drew better than, what, 45%. So what does that say about just Coloradans and drawing from their base?
For Polis, it's pretty outstanding. He spent $11 million of his own money or more on the primary and couldn't even hit 50%. That's pretty significant. When I talked to Walker Stapleton, he actually sees that as an opportunity. Whether he could actually capture any Democratic votes is probably a much bigger and more difficult question. But the idea that Polis couldn't even unite the Democratic Party in the primary, Republicans see that as a potential opening. Whether that persists or whether Democrats really do come together is going to be another question that decides who wins.
And I think that's one of the more interesting questions is how do the other Democrats who voted for some of these other candidates respond to Polis being the only candidate? Because, we haven't really seen that infighting between those four candidates since the primary gotten over, like we saw from Victor Mitchell last week with Walker Stapleton. And I think, it'll be interesting to see if those Kerry Kennedy supporters and those people turn out in the same numbers for Jared Polis.
Well, and we know these two could not be any more different, but Initiative 97 regarding the setbacks, that's one issue where they do agree, but that's a touchy subject as well here in Colorado.
Oil and gas is always a touchy subject when it comes to politics. And right now, yes, Walker Stapleton and Jared Polis do agree that Initiative 97 to increase the setbacks to 2,500 feet it goes too far. Now, what's really interesting is Polis has said in our debate that he supports a 2,000-foot setback. And when you ask folks in the industry, you know, if they tell you privately, they consider them one and the same. So it's really going to be an interesting question of if Initiative 97 makes the ballot, the oil and gas industry is really going to be focused on that. It's an existential question for them. But in some ways, oil and gas executives tell me so is Polis.
Right.
So do they have enough money to defeat both, or how will that shake out?
Well, and what I'm interested to see in regards to that stuff is, you know, how much they bring, you know, the renewable energy versus oil and gas into the discussion, and climate change. You know, when does this become more of an issue than just setbacks and more of the broader issue of, you know, how fast can we switch to renewable services and stuff like that? And I think that's kind of what I'm looking for in the next couple of months to see what happens.
Well, and it'll be interesting to see where we get to on healthcare as well. And unfortunately, we are done talking. Unfortunately, we could talk for hours, I think, about these two candidates and how different they are and where they stand. But we will hear more about their platforms, I think, in the upcoming weeks. John Frank, Blair Miller, as always, thank you, gentlemen. Back in a moment.